Indicator number 12. Unsolicited assistance. Professor Amelia Vaughn pushed open the door of room 347C, already apologizing. "Sorry, I'm late. The hallways here are impossible." She froze. This was definitely not the faculty meeting. 40 alien students in Security Academy uniforms stared at her. At the podium, a creche-tall commander, all scales and clicking mandibles, gestured at a holographic display that read, "Human Behavioral Threat Indicators" in letters large enough to see from orbit. "Oh," Vaughn said. "Wrong room." Commander Zethrak's 3 eyes fixed on her with an expression that transcended species barriers. Pure, distilled panic. "You..." His translator glitched. "You are human. Guilty as charged." Vaughn checked her datapad. 347B. She was at 347C Classic. "Faculty meeting next door?" "This is the faculty meeting," a student whispered. "Human threat assessment training. Mandatory for all instructors." Vaughn blinked. "Threat assessment? About humans?" "When a human offers help without being asked," Zethrak continued, his voice tight, "they are establishing dominance and gathering intelligence on your weaknesses." "Wait, what?" About 40 students, various species, all in Security Academy uniforms, sat at attention while a creche-tall commander stood at the podium. Commander Zethrak, according to the name displayed on the holographic board. He was currently displaying a list titled Human Behavioral Threat Indicators. Vaughn blinked. That was odd. But maybe it was some kind of icebreaker exercise. "Indicator number 12, Zethrak announced, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into galactic common. "Unsolicited assistance. When a human offers help without being asked, they are establishing dominance and gathering intelligence on your weaknesses." Several students took frantic notes. Vaughn frowned. That wasn't right at all. "Indicator number 13. Persistent questioning. Humans will ask seemingly innocent questions to map your psychological profile and identify tactical vulnerabilities." Okay, this was definitely not a faculty workshop. Indicator number 14. Pattern-seeking behavior. Humans compulsively identify patterns in data, behavior, and social structures. This allows them to predict and manipulate outcomes with frightening accuracy. Vaughn raised her hand. Old teaching habits died hard. The lecture hall went completely silent. Zethrak's 3 eyes fixed on her with an expression that, even across species barriers, clearly communicated, "Oh no." "Yes?" he said, his translator glitching slightly on the word. "Hi. Sorry to interrupt," Vaughn said, standing up because that's what you did when you spoke in academic settings. "I think I might be in the wrong room, but I couldn't help noticing. There are some significant misunderstandings about human behavior in your materials there. 40 pairs of alien eyes. Well, varying numbers of eyes, really. Some species had more, some had less. One had eye stalks, turned to stare at her. "You are..." Zethrak checked his roster, his translator struggling with the pronunciation. "Professor Amelia Vaughn? Human exchange faculty?" "That's me. From Earth's Cultural Exchange Program. I'm supposed to be teaching comparative learning methodologies this semester." She smiled warmly. "But since I'm here, I'd be happy to help clarify some of these misconceptions about human behavior. Free of charge." Zethrak's scales shifted to what Vaughn would later learn was existential dread purple. A student in the front row whispered to another, "It's identifying itself as helpful," just like the training said. "That's very..." Zethrak paused, clearly searching for words. "Unnecessary. We have extensive research." "Oh, I'm sure you do." Vaughn walked down the aisle, her comfortable teaching shoes making soft sounds on the academy floor. "But I actually am a human, so I might have some insider perspective. For instance, this bit about establishing dominance through assistance. That's not really accurate. We just like helping. It's kind of our thing." She pulled out her tablet, already scrolling through her teaching materials. "Here, let me pull up some proper pedagogical resources. I've got some great comparative studies on altruistic behavior across species." Every student in the room tensed. She's accessing data storage, someone whispered. Preparing visual aids, another added. Tactical presentation incoming, a third concluded. Zethrak held up a primary appendage. Professor Vaughn, perhaps we should continue this discussion in a more private setting. Oh, no need. Vaughn beamed at the class. I'm all about knowledge sharing. No point hiding in private when we can all learn together, right? The smile, Zethrak noted with growing alarm, showed teeth. Direct eye contact. Confident posture. Invasion of teaching space. Every single indicator from the threat manual. A soft alarm began chiming. Students started gathering their belongings with practiced efficiency. Oh, is this a fire drill? Vaughn asked, looking around. Sorry, I didn't mean to trigger. Evacuation Protocol Sigma, Zethrak said quietly. Standard procedure when human behavioral indicators reach level 5. Level 5 of what? Helpfulness. Vaughn laughed. The students nearest her flinched. That's silly. I'm just offering to correct some obviously wrong information. Like this part here. She pointed at the holographic display. About humans planning 47 steps ahead. We absolutely don't do that. We barely plan 3 steps ahead. Mostly we just, wing it. She looked around at the increasingly empty room. Is everyone okay? You all seem stressed. Your concern is noted, Zethrak said, which Vaughn's translator rendered from what was actually closer to, your psychological warfare is acknowledged. Here, let me show you what actual human teaching methods look like. Vaughn pulled up her lesson plans, projecting them onto the holographic display. See? These are my materials for the Comparative Learning Methodologies course. Very straightforward. Lots of interactive components, group discussion, critical thinking exercises. The last few students scrambled for the exits. Wait, where's everyone going? Vaughn called after them. I haven't even gotten to the good part. I brought handouts. She turned back to Zethrak, who stood frozen at the podium like a prey animal that had just realized it was being circled. Commander Zethrak, was it? Vaughn's smile was friendly, encouraging. Exactly the expression she'd used for 20 years when helping struggling students. I really think we should talk about these materials. There are some fundamental misunderstandings here that could lead to serious miscommunication between humans and other species. She took a step closer. Her tablet extended to show her credentials and research. For instance, this whole section on emotional engagement as tactical manipulation, that's just empathy. We're not trying to manipulate anyone. We just care about how others feel. It's instinctive. Direct approach. Persistent communication. Emotional appeal. Offering evidence while maintaining friendly demeanor. Zethrak's training had covered this scenario exactly. He triggered the station-wide alert. Wait, what are you? Vaughn started. Attention, all personnel, the automated system announced. Human threat level, educational. Repeat, educational level threat detected. All non-essential personnel evacuate Sector 347. Security teams to defensive positions. Vaughn stared. Educational level threat? What does that even mean? Zethrak was already backing toward the emergency exit. It means, Professor Vaughn, that you are exhibiting every single indicator of human pedagogical behavior, the most insidious form of human influence. I'm just trying to help? Exactly, Zethrak said, his voice heavy with the weight of someone confirming their worst fears. That's what makes it so dangerous. He disappeared through the exit, leaving Vaughn alone in the lecture hall, tablet still extended, teaching materials still displayed, and a profound sense of confusion settling over her. She looked at the empty room, at the threat assessment still glowing on the holographic display, at her own cheerful lesson plans next to dire warnings about human behavior. Does everyone understand? She said to no one in particular. Or should I break it down further? The security alarms intensified. Somewhere in the distance, she heard running footsteps, and what sounded like someone shouting, "She's asking if we understand. It's trying to ensure successful knowledge transfer." Amelia Vaughn, 20-year veteran of Earth's public education system, survivor of countless parent-teacher conferences, conqueror of standardized testing seasons, stood in the center of an alien security academy, and wondered, not for the first time that day, if she'd read the job description carefully enough. The door sealed shut with a pneumatic hiss. "Well," she said to the empty room, "this is new." The station-wide alert continued its warbling cry. Human threat level, educational. Repeat, educational level threat detected. Amelia Vaughn stood in the sealed lecture hall, watching through the observation window as academy personnel sprinted past in what appeared to be organized panic. "This seems excessive," she muttered. The remaining students, those who hadn't made it out before the lockdown, had taken shelter behind their desks. Actual shelter. Like she was a natural disaster. One brave soul, a small Pixarian with iridescent wings, peeked over the desk edge. Vaughn smiled encouragingly. "Hey, it's okay. I don't bite." The Pixarian ducked back down. Although, Vaughn continued, because 20 years of teaching had conditioned her to fill awkward silences with instruction, this is actually a great opportunity for active learning. You're all experiencing a real-time scenario, very hands-on approach to education. A muffled whimper came from behind the desks. "I love the engagement," Vaughn said brightly. "Commitment to the exercise. That's the kind of dedication that really pays off in—" The door burst open. Security teams poured in, weapons drawn but pointed at the floor, professional, cautious. The lead officer, a massive Thorian whose species evolved from pack hunters, held up a primary appendage. "Professor Vaughn, please remain calm." "I am calm," Vaughn said. "Would you like some coffee? I've got a thermos in my bag, happy to share." Every security officer tensed. "She's offering consumables," someone whispered into their comm. "Attempting to establish social bonds through resource sharing." "Also," Vaughn continued, pulling out a small notebook, "I'm really curious about your training protocols. How do you prepare for multi-species security scenarios? Do you use scenario-based learning or more traditional lecture formats?" The lead officer's scales shifted to alarmed orange. "Please stop asking questions." "Oh, I'm not interrogating you. I'm just interested in pedagogical approaches across different—" "Stop being interested," Vaughn blinked. That's literally my job." In the Security Command Center, Dr. Vrel watched the feeds with the intensity of someone observing a supernova through a telescope. The xenopsychologist had spent 15 years studying human behavioral patterns, had published 12 papers on human social manipulation tactics, had warned the council repeatedly about the dangers of human niceness. And now, here was a perfect specimen demonstrating every single threat indicator in real time. "Analysis," barked Security Chief Raxith. Vrel's tentacles quivered as they pulled up data streams. "She's operating at peak efficiency. Notice the friendly demeanor? Classic positive reinforcement strategy to lower defensive responses. The offer of caffeine, a known human stimulant that creates dependency patterns. And the questions—" Vrel shuddered. "The questions are clearly intelligence gathering. She's mapping our training protocols, identifying gaps in our security response, building psychological profiles of individual officers." On screen, Vaughn was now chatting amiably with a security officer about the Academy's curriculum structure. "And she's doing it while maintaining perfect eye contact," Vrel continued. "Dominant predator behavior, establishing herself as the alpha in the social hierarchy. Recommendation?" Raxith demanded. "Keep her contained. Do not engage in extended dialogue. Every word is a calculated move in a larger strategy." On screen, Vaughn pulled out her tablet. "Here, let me show you some of my teaching materials. I think you'll find the interactive elements really engaging." "She's accessing data storage," someone shouted. "Visual aids prepared," another added. Vrel's analysis scrolled across the screens. Subject demonstrates advanced pedagogical warfare, using educational frameworks to disarm and reprogram target psychology. Threat level, critical. Meanwhile, in the lecture hall, Vaughn had somehow convinced 3 security officers to sit down while she explained the difference between formative and summative assessment. "You see," she said, pulling up a chart, "formative assessment is ongoing. It helps you adjust your teaching in real time based on student comprehension. Summative is more of an endpoint evaluation, like your final exams." The officers nodded, actually taking notes. "What are you doing?" Raxith's voice boomed through their comms. "She's explaining educational theory, sir," one officer reported. "It's actually quite fascinating. You're compromised. Fall back immediately." The officers reluctantly stood, looking almost disappointed. "Oh, we can continue this later." Vaughn called after them. "I have office hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays." Vrel added to the analysis. Subject attempting to establish recurring contact points. Classic long-term influence operation. The Earth Diplomatic Corps arrived exactly 43 minutes after the initial alert. 3 diplomats, all human, all wearing the kind of cheerful expressions that made alien security forces reach for their weapons. Ambassador Harrison Blake led the delegation, carrying what appeared to be a basket. "We brought cookies," he announced to the security checkpoint. "Chocolate chip. Still warm. Thought it might help facilitate discussion." The checkpoint guard stared at the basket like it contained antimatter. "He's deploying chemical compounds via carbohydrate delivery system," Vrel observed from the command center. "Probable intent: alter neurological responses through glucose manipulation." The second diplomat, a woman named Olivia Martinez, was already pulling out a datapad. "We'd also like to review the materials you've been using for this human threat assessment course. I'm sure there are ways we can improve accuracy." "She's conducting reconnaissance," Raxith growled, "attempting to identify what we know about human capabilities." The third diplomat, James Wong, smiled warmly at the increasingly nervous guards. "We were also thinking, maybe we could organize some interactive learning activities, help bridge the cultural gap. Team-building exercises are really effective for coordinated tactical exercises," Vrel translated. "They're planning to infiltrate our training protocols under guise of cultural exchange." The diplomats were escorted, surrounded really, to the command center. "We understand there's been a misunderstanding," Blake said, setting down the cookie basket on Raxith's desk. The security chief eyed it like a live grenade. "Your Professor Vaughn has activated multiple threat protocols," Raxith said carefully. "Oh, Amelia?" Martinez laughed. "She's harmless. Well, she's a teacher. She can be a little intense about proper educational methods." "Confirmed," Vrel announced. "Subject shows obsessive dedication to pedagogical correctness. Typical human behavioral fixation." "We just want to help clear this up," Blake continued. "They're identifying as helpful," someone whispered. "Classic human opening gambit," another agreed. Wong pulled up a presentation on his tablet. "Look, we can explain human teaching behaviors. It's really quite simple once you understand the cultural context." Every alien in the command center took a step back. "They're preparing a presentation," Raxith said, his voice hollow with dread. On the security feed, Vaughn had somehow convinced her student hostages, refugees, to come out from behind their desks. She was arranging them into small groups. "What is she doing?" Raxith demanded. Vrel's analysis came back immediately. "Organizing them into discussion groups. Classic human collaborative learning strategy. She's restructuring their social dynamics to facilitate information sharing and collective problem solving. In other words, she's building a pack." The command center fell silent. Blake, cheerfully oblivious to the mounting horror around him, accepted a cookie from the basket. "So, about that threat assessment course. Amelia mentioned there were some inaccuracies in the materials." Martinez nodded enthusiastically. "We'd love to help correct those. Actually, we brought some proper educational resources on human behavior." "They're attempting cultural infiltration through information warfare," Vrel translated. "And maybe we could arrange some workshops, guest lectures, really give your students a proper understanding of—" "Stop!" Raxith commanded. "Stop helping!" Blake looked confused. "But that's why we're here? To help?" On screen, Vaughn was drawing diagrams on the holographic board while her captive audience, no, students, watched with what appeared to be genuine interest. "I brought my lesson. Plan from Earth," her voice came through the feed. She pulled out a data chip, holding it up like it was perfectly innocent. "Let me show you how we do threat assessment training in human educational systems." She smiled. That warm, encouraging, absolutely terrifying teacher smile. I think you'll find our methods quite effective. The command center's alert system upgraded the threat level. Human threat level, pedagogical. Someone started praying in a language the translators couldn't process. Vrel added one final note to the analysis. She's not just teaching. She's teaching them how to teach. This is recursive educational warfare. And in the lecture hall, Amelia Vaughn began her first cross-species lesson on effective instructional design, completely unaware that she'd just triggered what the galaxy would later call the Great Educational Crisis. The students were taking notes. That was when everyone knew it was already too late. All right, everyone. Amelia Vaughn clapped her hands together. Let's start with some active learning. In the observation deck, 15 military analysts went rigid. Active learning protocol initiated, one whispered into their recording device. Subject deploying kinetic engagement strategies. Vaughn pulled up a holographic display showing a simple problem-solving scenario. I want you to break into groups of 3 or 4. Discuss this scenario together and come up with potential solutions. You've got 5 minutes. The students, former hostages, current pupils, definitely confused, hesitantly began moving their chairs into clusters. Pack bonding exercises, Dr. Vrel announced from the command center. She's restructuring their social dynamics, building micro-hierarchies that she can control. They're just discussing a case study, Ambassador Blake offered weakly. He'd been confined to the observation deck with his fellow diplomats, ostensibly for consultation, but really for containment. Exactly, Security Chief Raxith growled. Intelligence-sharing protocols disguised as academic discourse. Below, Vaughn circulated between groups, listening to their discussions. Good thinking, she said to one cluster. But have you considered alternative perspectives? What if you approached from a different angle? Psychological interrogation techniques, an analyst noted. Using questions to destabilize established thought patterns. She's making them question their own assumptions, another added, horror creeping into their voice. Classic cognitive destabilization. A Thorian student raised their hand. Professor, what if there's no right answer? Vaughn smiled. That's excellent critical thinking. Sometimes the best solution is recognizing that multiple approaches could work. It depends on context, resources, and desired outcomes. The observation deck fell silent. She's teaching them to think independently, Raxith said, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence. Undermining hierarchical command structures. They'll question orders, evaluate alternatives, make autonomous decisions. That's just good education, Martinez offered. That's tactical insurgency. Vaughn, blissfully unaware of the panic she was causing, continued her lesson. Now, let's use the Socratic method to explore this further. She pointed to a Pixarian student. Tell me, why do you think this approach would work? Because the scenario suggests limited resources? Good. And why does that matter? Resource constraints affect available options? Exactly. Now, what assumptions are we making about those constraints? The student paused, thinking. That they're actually constraints? That they can't be changed? Brilliant, Vaughn beamed. You're questioning the fundamental premises. That's advanced analytical thinking. In the observation deck, an analyst was writing furiously. Subject employs layered questioning to force targets into recursive self-examination. Each answer generates new questions, creating dependency on instructor for cognitive validation. The student who'd answered looked pleased, almost proud. Student exhibits emotional attachment to instructor approval, Vrel observed. Loyalty bonding initiated. Time to compromise, 4 minutes, 38 seconds. Raxith marked the student's file. Compromised asset. Recommend deprogramming. Okay, pop quiz time, Vaughn announced cheerfully. Every species in the observation deck that had the biological capacity for it went pale. Rapid response threat assessment, someone translated. Testing operational readiness. Vaughn pulled up a series of quick questions on the holographic display. Don't overthink it. Just give me your first instinct. Ready? The students nodded. Scenario 1. You're given incomplete information and need to make a decision. Do you A. Wait for more data, B. Make your best guess, or C. Seek additional perspectives? Hands went up. Students called out answers. An actual discussion broke out about the merits of each option. Vaughn facilitated with practiced ease. Great points. Notice how there's not necessarily one right answer. It depends on time pressure, stakes, available resources. She's teaching them situational flexibility, an analyst breathed. Adaptive response protocols. They're learning, another whispered, voice hollow. And they were. The students were engaged, asking follow-up questions, building on each other's ideas. That uniquely human approach to education, collaborative, questioning, building knowledge together, was working exactly as it should, which, from the alien's perspective, was terrifying. A young Kreshtal student raised their appendage. Professor Vaughn, this connects to what Commander Zethrak was teaching earlier about pattern recognition, doesn't it? Excellent connection, Vaughn practically glowed. You're synthesizing information across contexts. That's exactly the kind of critical thinking we want to develop. The observation deck recorded the moment for posterity. Student demonstrates cross-referential analysis and receives positive reinforcement. Loyalty to human command structure intensifying. Original instructor authority undermined. Estimated time to full compromise, 6 minutes. 20 minutes into the lesson, Vaughn noticed her students seemed tense. Well, more tense than usual for people who'd started the day thinking she was a threat to galactic security. Okay, everyone. I'm noticing some stress in the room. She dimmed the lights slightly. Let's take a quick break for some mindfulness exercises. They're great for managing anxiety and improving focus. In the command center, Vrel's tentacles went rigid. What is she doing? Professor Vaughn? A student raised their hand tentatively. What's mindfulness? It's a stress management technique, very simple. Everyone just sit comfortably and close your eyes. They're entering a vulnerable position, Raxith barked into the comm. All units on high alert. It's fine, Vaughn's voice drifted through the speakers, warm and calm. Just focus on your breathing. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Let your thoughts drift past without judgment. Combat trance state, an analyst identified. Preparing for confrontation. Notice the controlled breathing, another added. Oxygenating for enhanced physical performance. And the emotional regulation component, Vrel pulled up data. Suppressing fear responses for tactical advantage. The students, eyes closed, breathing slowly, appeared almost peaceful. Now, Vaughn continued, her voice taking on that particular teacher calm that could soothe even the most chaotic classroom. I want you to identify one emotion you're feeling. Don't judge it. Just acknowledge it. Fear, curiosity, confusion. Whatever it is, it's valid. Emotional intelligence training, Vrel said quietly. Teaching them to recognize and regulate psychological states, theirs and others. A student spoke up, eyes still closed. I feel confused and a little scared. That's perfectly natural, Vaughn assured them. Now, can you locate where you feel that in your body? My chest. It feels tight. Good awareness. Now breathe into that tightness. Let it expand with your breath. In the observation deck, Blake leaned toward Raxith. You see? Just basic stress management. We teach this to elementary school kids. You teach children to suppress biological fear responses and maintain tactical awareness while in vulnerable positions. We teach them to handle their emotions healthily. That's what I said. Below, Vaughn had the students open their eyes. They looked noticeably calmer, more centered. How do you feel? She asked. Better, several admitted. More focused, another added. Like I could handle whatever comes next, a third said. The observation deck was silent for a long moment. Then Vrel spoke. She just gave them confidence. Emotional resilience, the belief that they can overcome challenges. So, Martinez asked, so she's turned them into soldiers who don't break under pressure, or students who can handle exam stress. Same thing. Vaughn checked her lesson plan. Great. Now that we're all centered, let's talk about something really important: constructive feedback and growth mindset. She pulled up a new slide. The human brain is incredibly plastic. We're always learning, always growing. There's no such thing as a fixed ability. When we make mistakes, we're not failing. We're learning what doesn't work, so we can try something new. The students leaned forward, interested despite themselves. This is called a growth mindset. Instead of "I can't do this," we say, "I can't do this yet." The yet is crucial. It means we believe in our own capacity to improve. She's hacking their self-perception, Vrel said, voice distant. Removing psychological limiters. Teaching them that failure is temporary and improvement is inevitable. Vaughn continued, warming to one of her favorite topics. So when you receive feedback, even critical feedback, try to hear it as information, not judgment. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I grow? A student raised their hand. But what if the feedback is wrong? Excellent question. Then you've learned something about the person giving the feedback, their perspective, their priorities, their blind spots. All information is useful if you're asking the right questions. She smiled at the class. Her class now, really. They were engaged, thinking, growing, exactly what she'd hoped for. You're doing fantastic work, everyone. I'm really proud of your progress. In the observation deck, another student was marked as compromised, then another. Then Vrel made a notation that would appear in 17 academic papers over the next month. Entire classroom compromised. Human pedagogical infection rate, 100%. Deprogramming may be impossible. Recommend quarantine. But in the lecture hall, all anyone could see was a teacher doing what teachers do best, and students learning despite themselves, which, the galaxy was beginning to realize, might be the most dangerous thing of all. Junior Officer Kix stepped forward and asked, "Professor Vaughn, what is your mission here?" The lecture hall went silent. Vaughn blinked. My mission? To help students develop critical thinking skills and emotional intelligence. In the observation deck, Raxith slammed the console. Confirmed. Psychological warfare. Vaughn pulled up her credentials. I'm a teacher. Elementary school. I teach children. Her file appeared. 20 years experience, ages 5 to 11. You train human children to think critically? Raxith's voice cracked. To question authority? That's the point of education? Wait, Vaughn said slowly. How do you teach your children? We provide necessary information for designated roles. You don't teach them to think for themselves? That would be chaos. Vaughn stared. You've been terrified of kindergarten strategies. By morning, xenopsychologists had reviewed Earth's entire educational database. Human children are systematically taught critical thinking from age 5, Dr. Vrel announced to the council. Encouraged to question authority, recognize patterns, collaborate, regulate emotions, persist through failure. These are all our threat behaviors, someone noted. Exactly. Deliberately trained into every offspring. Vrel pulled up data. Human adaptability isn't genetic, it's taught, universally. That's military-grade conditioning. That's basic education, Ambassador Blake countered. The council erupted in chaos. Then someone asked, should we classify human teachers as weapons? The academy promoted Vaughn to Director of Human Integration Studies. We need someone to teach our people how to not panic around normal human behavior, Raxith explained. The course became Understanding Human Educational Methodologies. When a human offers help, they usually mean it literally, Vaughn explained to security officers sitting at maximum safe distance. They're just helpful. But why? We evolved to cooperate for survival. It's instinctive. So it's not tactical? Not usually, no. How do we tell the difference? Vaughn sighed. This would take a while. The controversy spread across the galaxy. Some species adopted human teaching methods. The results were promising and terrifying. Students who could think critically, question assumptions, adapt. Other species banned human teachers as cognitively hazardous. The council remained deadlocked. They're creating an army of critical thinkers, one faction argued. They're just teaching, another countered. Exactly. 6 months later, Vaughn held office hours. The sign read, "All students welcome." A Pixarian entered. "I'm struggling with cross-cultural communication protocols." "Let's talk through it," Vaughn said, asking questions, suggesting approaches. The student left understanding improved, confidence boosted, only moderately concerned they'd been psychologically manipulated. In the council chambers, the debate continued. Human teachers should be classified as weapons. They're educators, not soldiers. They're both. That's the problem. Or the solution? Silence. Then someone asked, What if we need what they're offering? What if the galaxy needs to learn to think like humans?" That's a terrifying thought. But is it wrong? No one had a good answer. 6 months into her new position, Vaughn sat at her desk reviewing course evaluations. The responses were mixed. Professor Vaughn's teaching methods are highly effective, but extremely unsettling. Security Officer Vrath. I've learned more in 1 semester than in my entire previous education. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Dash Cadet Zix. The human made me question my fundamental assumptions about knowledge. Acquisition. I may need therapy. 5 stars. Junior Analyst Krell. A knock at her door. Another student, seeking help. "Come in," Vaughn called. A Thorian officer entered, clutching a datapad. "Professor, I'm having trouble with the critical thinking module. The section on questioning authority figures." "Ah, that's a tough one." Vaughn smiled. "Let's break it down. Remember, critical thinking doesn't mean disrespecting authority. It means understanding the reasoning behind decisions. Come sit. Let's work through it together." As she began explaining, asking questions, encouraging independent thought, building confidence, she remained completely unaware of the security feed documenting every moment. Of Dr. Vrel adding to their ever-growing file on human pedagogical techniques. Of the council debate that had now entered its 4th month. Of the 17 species that had started pilot programs in human-style education. Of the galaxy slowly, reluctantly, terrifyingly realizing that maybe, just maybe, the humans were onto something. The Thorian student worked through the problem, understanding dawning. "Oh, I see it now. You're teaching me to think for myself, not just follow protocols blindly." "Exactly," Vaughn beamed. "You've got it." The student felt a surge of accomplishment, pride, the distinctly human sensation of growth, and also, very quietly, the thought, the human is being helpful again. Why is this so terrifying? But they came back the next week anyway. They all did. Because that was the thing about human teaching methods. They worked. Even when you knew what was happening. Even when you understood the techniques. Even when you were fully aware that you were being encouraged to think independently, question assumptions, and develop critical thinking skills. They still worked. "Remember," Vaughn said as the student left, "there are no stupid questions. Only questions you haven't asked yet." The student nodded, filed that away with all the other dangerous human wisdom they were accumulating, and headed back to their quarters to question absolutely everything they'd been taught before meeting Professor Amelia Vaughn. In her office, Vaughn made a note in her lesson plan for next week's lecture. Cover growth mindset. Students seem ready. And somewhere in the galactic archives, a xenopsychologist added one final entry to the file on human threat assessment. The most dangerous human weapon isn't their technology, their persistence, or their adaptability. It's their compulsive need to help others improve. They see potential everywhere. They believe everyone can grow, learn, become better than they are. And worst of all, they're usually right. Recommendation: stop trying to defend against human teachers. Learn from them instead. Addendum: may the galaxy have mercy on us all. The file was marked threat level, educational, permanent. And across the galaxy, in classrooms and offices and corridors, human teachers continued, doing what they'd always done, helping, teaching, believing that everyone could learn, grow, and become more than they were. One terrifyingly encouraging conversation at a time.